Hello guys, my name is Anna and I vlog daily from Ukraine since the start of brutal Russian invasion. If you want to know more about my country and you support Ukraine and you agree that Russia is a terrorist state, subscribe to my channel and share the videos that you consider important. Actually, every day Russia provides us with more and more evidence that it is a real terrorist state. And today I want to speak about grain deal and Russia's withdrawal from it. You know that Ukraine is often called the breadbasket of Europe. It is both a blessing and a curse of my country. A blessing because, we can export lots of good agricultural products, especially grain and sunflower oil, to many countries, thus feeding the world. A curse because for centuries that was a reason of different invasions and, for example, Russian preoccupation with the idea to possess Ukraine and erase our culture, making Ukraine a part of its empire. They failed, but they continue to terrorize the world using food, which is below the level of normality. And let me remind you the history of this grain deal and total absurdity that exists in this geopolitical situation when normal countries and international organizations still have to negotiate with a terrorist state. It all began in 2022 when, because of Russian aggression and occupation of our ports, Ukraine was unable to transport grain to the countries that need it. These are different countries with high and low income, but many of them are greatly dependent on the agricultural products coming from Ukraine. The tension was really hard because it could cause global famine, especially in some African countries, and the solution was needed. But the problem is not war in Ukraine, as some people like saying. The problem is Russian terrorism against the world and Russian war in Ukraine, not Ukrainian war. And to save the situation, the head of the United Nations organization, my favorite, very active organization in expressing concerns, but this time, together with the president of Turkey, Erdogan, they have managed to develop a grain deal, according to which Ukraine would be able to transport the grain to the places that wait for Ukrainian food, and Russia will not prevent Ukrainians in doing that. This agreement was not signed by Ukraine and Russia. It was signed with Turkey and the United Nations, and each country signed its own part. So there was no agreement between Ukraine and Russia. This agreement was between Russia, United Nations, and Turkey. And now, by withdrawing this agreement, Russia actually demonstrates its total disrespect to United Nations and Turkey. Its disrespect to Ukraine, it demonstrates daily, and it results in lots of victims and destructions. But definitely evil will be punished, and I hope that more and more people will see that Russia is not just an aggressor towards Ukraine, trying to get back its Soviet territories in one new monstrous country. No, it is a global terrorist that uses food as a weapon. Look, what is the reason for this whole tragedy and problem for so many countries in the world? The reason is that Russia does not let Ukrainian ships with Ukrainian products travel to Ukrainian partners who wait for this food. Why? Because Russia decided to terrorize the world and to occupy these ports, violating all international rules, violating Ukrainian borders, but not just Ukrainian, all normal agreements that exist in the world, which once again proves it is a terrorist state and a very manipulative and violent terrorist state that uses food and vulnerable countries as an instrument of its brutal actions. So please, one thing that I'm asking is never say that the problem with grain and food is the problem caused by Ukraine. No, this is not Ukrainian war. This is Russian war in Ukraine. This is Russian terrorism to the world. What are the reasons behind Russian withdrawal of this agreement, apart from Russia just being an evil terrorist state? I know that so many people still look for some explanation because they do not believe in this pure evil. But believe me, pure evil exists. Look at the rulers of Russian empire, dying empire, and that like monstrous authoritarian state. And apart from that, possibly Putin was very saddened by the fact that Erdogan returned Mariupol prisoners of war, commanders of Azov, back to Ukraine. And maybe this is his reaction to Erdogan's cooperation with Ukraine and the world. And no, it is not the reason of a Crimea bridge explosion, but potentially Russia claims it wants some sanctions to be taken away. So, guys, they are working and just terrorizes the world. It wants to do whatever it decides and manipulates with food and hunger. After the grain deal was signed back in 2022, Erdogan became extremely popular among African countries. The problem is that sometimes in the media, the discourse that spreads, once again with the support of Russian money and post-Soviet influence that is still strong in these countries, because like Soviet Union was active in the 70s, in the 80s in African countries. And they try spreading this like, because Ukraine does not want to negotiate. Ukraine was brutally invaded. Otherwise, Ukraine would freely continue transporting the grains, sowing the fields that are now mined by whom? By Russian orcs. Why do they mine fields of grain? Why do they mine forests? Because they are terrorists. No other explanation. Don't try to find something deeper in there, because it is total hatred, disrespect, and misery that Russia is trying to spread the world, because perhaps that's the only value that they are able to produce inside their society, population. So now we don't know what will happen, but President Zelensky, understanding how many countries depend on Ukrainian grain, understanding that it is totally absurd to withdraw it, is ready to continue transportation of grain to the ports of need. He asks Turkey and the United Nations to continue supporting this transportation and be whatever it will be. If Russia is a maniac, and it is, they can target the ships, which can result in the death of people and loss of grain, so much needed by many countries. And this is once again demonstrate their manipulation. They don't care about these countries who are waiting for Ukrainian bread. They are caring only for the instruments they can brutally use and terrorize the world. So if you agree with me and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. One more thing that I would like to stress at the end of this video is that you cannot negotiate with Russia. You cannot sign any agreement with Russia because it is not worth the paper on which it was signed. Russia never respects others, other opinion. It never follows rules. It is created by evil powers to demonstrate the world what true evil may be. And our task is to stop it because it is a real terrorist state. And look at that, United Nations, a respected global organization, at least previously respected global organization. Turkey and its president, which has a strong voice on a global arena. And Russia signed grain deal with these two parties. And what? Nothing. It is very easy for them to break any promise and to break any agreement. I know living in normal countries, you believe it is impossible. But trust me, I'm Ukrainian and I'm a neighbor of Russia for a very long period of time. And the last 300 centuries of Ukrainian history are actually marked by this bloody desire of Russia to erase us, to take over us, but they constantly lose. And I hope that this time they will finally lose for the last time and understand that Ukraine is luckily not Russia. This year demonstrated a lot. Thank you so much for buying me coffees and becoming my patrons and supporting more projects. Subscribe to my Instagram, Twitter, Threads, join my Discord community, and also a beautiful announcement on our site with merch where you can find t-shirts and cups. We launched a new collection which tells you more about Ukrainian cultural heritage. There are lots of new interesting designs, and those of you who like such things, let me know what is your favorite. But most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Thank you for protecting us in your minds, in your hearts, in conversations, and in all possible ways. Slava Ukraini!